Hi, I'm James Michael Riley, and welcome to Underhill, one of the first green roof single-family homes in the state of New Jersey. This is a DIY project, and today we're looking at Underhill's masonry elements, the walls, the stuff that hold up the roof. The process began with a set of drawings, which I'll show you here. These were created by me. I'm not a professional architect, but in the state of New Jersey, you're allowed to design a house for your own use without being an architect. You just can't do it for anybody else. So when we went for our building permit, our permit consisted of 12 plans of the sort you see here, created by me. This is one of them. And additionally, 2 detailed drawings of specific structural aspects of the house. These were designed by a professional engineer. And this specified decisions like wall thickness, beam placement, the composition of the concrete, the size of the block that had to be used to build the walls, where steel reinforcement went, both vertically and horizontally, and how the walls interconnect with the roof and the floors. So once we had our building permit, had all that put together and approved by the town with various changes and suggestions mandated by the town, then we were able to get to the process of building the house. And the first step was pouring footings. Most of Underhill's footings are not visible anymore because we're in a pretty advanced stage of the project. But here at the front of the garage, which is not yet complete, you can see the footings that will go under the garage doors. Footings are solid poured concrete elements that rest on undisturbed earth, and the walls go on top of them. This one is narrow because there's not a lot of load directly on it, but for most of the rest of the walls, the footings are wider than the wall. For example, a 12-inch concrete block wide wall would take a 24-inch footing so that it sticks out 6 inches on either side of it to distribute the load more evenly on the earth. Those footings have steel reinforcement in them, steel rod number 4, which is half-inch steel rod running lengthwise through them, and then every couple of feet a short piece of rod wired to the lengthwise rod put together. Those are inside of a wooden form at that time, and then the concrete trucks come, they pour the concrete in the footings, and then after it's had a couple of days to set, you take away the wooden forms, and then you can get started building walls. Underhill's walls consist of 2 primary elements. They're the concrete block portion and the natural stone portion. What we're seeing here, of course, is some of the concrete block portion. This is in the area of what will soon be the garage. And it brings to light some of the particular challenges of building solid masonry walls with a house that has a lot of curves to it. So along the back here, this is this is the back wall of the garage. It's a case of just building a fairly conventional concrete block wall. However, something to keep in mind is that because this wall has a lateral load against it, that is to say, after we built it, it was backfilled with earth, and the earth is pushing against it, it's necessary to have steel reinforcement in that wall to keep it from cracking open under the force of that lateral load. The steel reinforcement is of 2 sorts. There is a kind running horizontally, and that's a product called DuraWall, and that is every 16 inches. So that is to say, every other course of block has DuraWall running along it. You lay it on top of that course, and then you build the next course on top of it. The other form of steel reinforcement is rebar, and the rebar is set in the footings of the wall with holes that we drilled, and then they go in with a very strong epoxy. And then that stuff runs vertically every 16 inches. So each block has 2 cells in it, 2 openings, in a classic concrete block, or what some people still call cinder block, although that's not what it is anymore. So every other one of these has steel rod in it, and you build up around that rod, which is annoying to do, but necessary for the ultimate strength of the wall. And then when all of that is put together, and when the town has inspected and approved the steel reinforcement, then you pour concrete down in the cells, all the way down to the footing, to knit the whole thing together and in a sense make it a solid concrete block wall with steel reinforcement in it. So to get the concrete to go all the way down, there's a vibrating machine you can use to do that. We did it the old-fashioned way with an extra piece of steel rod, and we would just jam it down and wiggle it, jam it down and wiggle it, pour a little more, jam it down and wiggle it until the whole thing was full. And that makes it a very solid wall knit together vertically and horizontally. One of the challenges you can see here is that Underhill has a lot of curved walls, because I like curves. So the way that you build a curved wall out of concrete block that is not intended for curves is that concrete block has the little ears sticking off the ends of it. You chip off the end, you chip off the ears on one side, so that when you assemble the block that way, they begin to form a curve. And then you just make up the little spaces that you've created with additional mortar. Underhill's block walls, that is to say the concrete block walls, only extend up to where in the finished house you'll see them. And those are, they only come up to where you reach daylight, and then the concrete block stops, so that none of that concrete block is visible from the outside of the house. And once we reach the finished ground level, we switched over to building out of natural stone. Now, this is not stone facing on top of a concrete block wall. This is a solid stone wall. From the block up, it's all stone. So there was a lot of hand laying. It's more like putting together a three-dimensional puzzle that has never been put together before in the history of the universe. In some of the cases, especially with some of the straight walls, you could accelerate that a little bit by using formwork. It's a process called slip forming, where you build stone walls inside of forms and then move the forms up as you go. But in the case of something like this, especially this corner, which isn't even a straight 90-degree corner, and it goes to the front of the house, which is a kind of a lazy-ass curve, as you can see. This was built, for the most part, without formwork and just hand laying. So once you get up to the roof level, you've created a solid masonry wall, either concrete block or stone. It's all masonry, held together by mortar and cement, and ready for the load of the roof, which is considerable in the case of a green roof house.